Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. This video is a more kind of behind the scenes look at some things that I've been doing recently. I don't know about you guys, but I've really been enjoying doing these sit down videos, being able to share just some more personal opinions and thoughts about things. And especially in my last video, I really enjoyed diving into older exhibitions, things from like 2018 where I haven't gone back and looked at the photos in forever. So I thought that was actually quite fun to walk down memory lane a little bit with the Judith Bernstein show at Casman Gallery from 2018, as well as the Nick Cave show at Jack Shaman Gallery for 2018. God, those were like ages ago. So yeah, I really enjoyed kind of digging all of that up for you, and I continue to looking forward to doing so in the future. This video is gonna be exciting. I'm sorry if I look and sound a little tired. It's because I am, because I just got back from a really fantastic trip to London. I love London. It is the second largest art market in the world. It's a beautiful city. I mean, I don't think I need to sell this to anyone, but in terms of the galleries that are there and the shows that you can see and just the great food and everything else, I love London. I'm also very lucky that I have some family living there that I can, gives me a good excuse to go, in addition to obviously all the art things that are going on. And it's also just not very far from New York. I don't think people realize that the flight going to London is it's less than 6 hours versus flying to like San Francisco. It's like more than 6 hours. So it's very easy to get to from London. And another hack that I have been employing over the last year is I made a couple of personal decisions when I reached my mid-30s that I was going to start staying in hotels more. There's more story behind that, but I'll just leave it at that. I wanted to stay at more hotels instead of like Airbnbs and things. And then I wanted to take day flights as much as possible instead of red eyes, because overnight flights are just very disruptive to the system. I'm an incredibly light sleeper. I never sleep well on flights in general. So yeah, that was kind of just a decision I made when possible. Obviously, you can't always, not do an overnight flight. And so going to London, though, there is an 8 a.m. and then you land at 8 p.m. and it is absolute heaven because you arrive, have a little dinner, go to bed, wake up feeling pretty good. By day 2, you're feeling like jet lag never happened. So highly recommend the day flight. I also really love editing on flights, so it's actually a great time for me to work on my videos and stuff, because frankly, again, you're not like really gonna get to enjoy yourself. Movies aren't that great quality in terms of, the cinematography and the sound and stuff on flights. I can't sleep well on flights, so the only thing left to do is really to work on flights. And I do work very well on flights. I'm very productive, especially when it comes to something like editing. That's just a very kind of manual, thoughtless thing. And so anyway, why did I go to London? So I went to London to see Sophie von Hellermann's new exhibit called Moonage, and I will touch on that in a second, but I didn't obviously just go to London to see one show. There were a lot of other great shows that I was having a lot of FOMO not being able to see. The Joan Schneider show at Gallery Thaddeus Ropac is one of those. The Jana Schroeder show at Scarsdead got extended a couple of weeks, so I think it was originally supposed to end in January, like mid-January, and then they moved it to end on February 1st, so I got to see it on the very last day, which I was so thankful for. So there were just a ton of great shows. Another like personal goal that I had, which I got to do a little bit of, I didn't have a ton of time because I flew in on a Wednesday night. I had Thursday day, Friday day, Saturday day, and then I flew back on Sunday. So I only had 3 full days. And to be perfectly honest, Thursday I had to work a fair amount. I had to do a lot of editing and preparation and stuff like that. So I actually didn't do any galleries or anything on Thursday. I was also still kind of jet lagged, so I just didn't. go out and about. But on Friday, I was like, okay, I'm here. I really need to make the most of this. Oh, Thursday, I also I went to the gallery dinner and I went to Sophie's opening at night. So during the day, I didn't want to push myself too hard that's what it was. It's coming back to me now. It's crazy how something can like literally have just happened and it's like already leaving my memory, but it's probably not a good sign. But I have a busy life. I have a lot going on. So yeah, Sophie's opening was that night, the gallery dinner was that night, and so I really wanted to kind of save my social battery for that occasion. And then Friday, I wanted to see more galleries in London that I'd never been to before. So more emerging galleries, galleries in South London, galleries in Bethal Green, like galleries that are just further from, I usually stay in Notting Hill or in Mayfair. And a lot of the main galleries that I do go see are all kind of in that Mayfair region, just because they're quite close to one another and there's a lot of great stuff there, like touristy stuff like Dishoom and Liberty and Bond Street and Hyde Park. And it's just a lovely place when you're a tourist for London. So I love, you know, going out and about in that area of town. However, there are amazing galleries all over parts of London, everywhere. And the unfortunate thing is, while many of them are clustered, and what I mean by clustered is, for example, two galleries I'm going to talk about called Corrie Gallery and then Greengrassi Gallery, they actually share a space. So they're clustered like location wise. And then three other galleries in Bethal Green that were also literally right next door to one another, like boom, 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 was Project Native Informant, Mother's Tank Station, Marine Poly. And then you just walked up to the approach and then you walked over to soft opening and then you could make your way. I ran out of time. I did really want to go see the Alice Neal show at Victoria Miro Gallery, which was kind of on the way back to the west part of London, but I totally ran out of time on Friday, unfortunately. But I think I still did pretty well considering I only had about 3 hours to go out and about, and I was also by myself, so I normally have help filming, and I did actually have my friend helping me film on Saturday. However, I love her. She's not quite used to the camera yet, so I will say in that video, this happens to everyone. She did an amazing job, and I'm so thankful for her help, honestly, on this, because like I never would have been able to get these great shots of me, you know, walking through the gallery and stuff. But it is funny when you first start filming, what you see in your human eye versus what the camera sees is so different. I won't get into the science of it, but it's basically drastically different. So when you're filming, you don't realize sometimes like how quickly you're moving with the camera. So you're like, oh, I'm looking at that, and then I'm looking at that, and then I'm looking at this. And if you're moving the camera all over to get those things, which, hey, if you want to see a great example of this, watch my earlier videos. They'll make you want to throw up. Not because they're awful looking, but because they're like really motion sicknessy. In fact, that's when I have trouble, is when, you know, someone helps me film and it's really like doom, 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 even though the camera that I use has a really nice built-in stabilizer. I use the DJI Pocket Gimbal 3, which I really love for those kind of wider, bigger panning gallery shots. And it's also very subtle, which is nice too, because I think sometimes a camera can make people feel a little uncomfortable because they're like, what are you doing? Why are you filming me? But it really helps kind of stabilize. However, if you're still moving it around quite aggressively or quite quickly, then the shots can be just a little too fast for the human eye to enjoy. So that can give you a little bit of motion sickness. I'm super sensitive, so when I edit that, I get really motion sick. Anyway, long story short, that's a little disclaimer for the videos on Saturday. But the videos on Friday, I was filming myself. I did try to do a few where I would like stick it up and then kind of walk around, but that was not every gallery had a good like windowsill or something that I could kind of do that with. So I did my best, but it was just me and my lonesome. But long story short, I was able to visit a handful of galleries that I've seen, and I'm familiar with their programs. I've seen them at art fairs, like Soft Opening. I've seen them so many times at art fairs. They're always at all of the Nada fairs, for example. Just saw them at the Paris Salon, which was fantastic. So I really want to see their home space because I feel like I know this gallery, but I've also never actually been to the gallery, which is kind of a bizarre feeling. And I just wanted to give you guys as well kind of a new and fun insight into like other parts of London. I never want to, I know it's easy to get into the same pattern of like, here's the same, you know, 10 galleries or whatever, but I am always wanting to try to explore more and do different. And this year I really do want to like keep branching out and going to see galleries that are new. None of these galleries are new. They're all like, you know, they've been around for like 10 years, but new to me, maybe new to the channel. Maybe I've never covered them before, but yeah, just new and interesting. So I want to do that in New York as well. I want to do that a little bit all over. Same with Paris, but yeah, so I had a nice handful. So on Friday I did that, and then Saturday I was able to kind of hit up all of the big shows that I really wanted to see in Mayfair, which was great. So you have three different videos kind of documenting all of that, and yeah, I'm gonna jump into probably in the order that I saw them, which is a little different from how I released the videos, because I released the Mayfair ones first and then the kind of South London Bethal Green video later. But that's usually just from a storytelling aspect. I don't know, I just make these decisions. Don't think too much into it. So yeah, I will actually start with, well, let me just start with giving a big thank you to Polariart Gallery and to Sophie von Hellermann. The show was incredible. I was really honored to be invited to this dinner and to meet all of these incredible people, especially, you know, to see Sophie again, meet a lot of people from her family. I just had the best time. I don't go to a lot of openings. So I first went to the opening and then the dinners later. And I don't go to a lot of openings in New York, which is something I would love to change in the future. I mean, I think openings are a fantastic way to like connect and meet new people and see the art community out and about. For me, it is purely practical because I do this just on my own time on the side. I don't really have time to go to an opening because the only thing about an opening is it's like socializing and meeting and greeting, which is great and that's fantastic. But for me, like when I go out and about, if I'm going to take 3 hours, I'm going to like go to, you know, 10, 15 galleries, shoot a bunch of content, and ideally the gallery space will be pretty empty so that you can really appreciate the space and the works. And that's like impossible to do at openings just because obviously everyone's like socializing and it's packed and it's, you know, it's for something else, which is wonderful again. And I'm sad that I can't prioritize that at this point in my life. I hope I can one day, but that is why you will not normally see me at gallery openings. That being said, I went to Sophie von Hellermann's opening and it was so much fun. Everyone was so kind. Thank you to everyone that said something to me. I always, especially when I'm there like by myself, I'm like, please talk to me. I'm like, I am alone and I'm feeling awkward. So thank you for everyone that talked to me and said that you liked my channel or my videos. It always makes me feel really good. So I appreciate that. And, but it was so cool to go to an opening in London because not that it's that different from an opening in New York, but it was just fun to see the art community in London and see, you know, all the art students and all of people that have gallery spaces and project spaces and filmmakers and painters. And it's just a fun, interesting group of individuals. And yeah, collectors and art advisors, and it was just great to meet everyone, and it is really funny to... Also, I will say one key difference between, at least, I mean, granted, this is the only opening I've been to in London, but like, I do find that the Brits are more standoffish, kind of. They kind of keep to their own, and the Americans, for the openings I have been to, total strangers, and this is not because I have a channel or anything, like total strangers will be like, oh, I like your coat and like let's chat and da-da-da, like versus the Brits, like you could pretty much walk around most of the night and if you're not really making an effort to talk to anyone, like no one's gonna talk to you. And so it is interesting, but that was kind of funny. But the turnout was incredible. There was really great energy in the room because there were two shows, and this was at Polariart's Conduit Street location, which they just opened, I believe, last year or the year before. Maybe it's been 2 years now, but it's fairly new. And then they have their location on Savile Row, and then they have, I think they still have their original location over in Fitzrovia, which is fantastic. So love this gallery. They're amazing. Love Pilar, love Yana, love everyone that works at the gallery. They were all so kind, and yeah, it was just really, really fun. There were two shows, the Sophie von Hellermann show upstairs, and then downstairs in the smaller gallery space was a show by the British artist George Wilson, who, despite the name, she's a woman. Don't let that throw you. She had some really great works down there, and so yeah, that was quite fun. And then the dinner as well was quite fun. And then I broke my dry January, which was always a blessing. I do it pretty much every year. I've done it every year the last, I think, 4 years at this point, and it's always a good feeling when you can have a nice little sip of wine for the first time. So I thoroughly enjoyed that. And then went to bed. I'll talk more about the exhibit when I go back, like full, because yeah, just to get in that order. But then on Friday, yes, so like I said, I wanted to venture out. I wanted to see more emerging galleries, even though many of these galleries some of them were 20 years old plus. So, but they tend to either do just emerging or like a mix of emerging. The other thing that was interesting is that Condo was going on. So if you're not familiar with Condo, they do it in London, they do it in New York. I didn't realize it actually originated in London back in, I believe, 2016. And so it's essentially a really cool initiative where it's a bit like a gallery weekend, but it lasts for a month. And instead of it is the galleries local to that area. So it's like a bunch of London galleries, like 48 London galleries or something, that all get together, or in Mexico City or in New York, whatever city is putting it on. There's like a handful that do it now. And then they invite international galleries from all over. So like the US, there were from Switzerland, from Zurich, from Milan, from Paris. Like there were galleries from all over, and they invite them and they kind of open up their space to them and they let them show their artist. So it's a really fun way to just kind of do a bit of an exchange. And I think January is such a great time to do it as well, because as I mentioned in my January kind of first exhibitions of the year behind the scenes, like we're all waking up a little, we're all kind of trying to start the year off. And I think hosting, you know, an international gallery and a new artist is kind of a fun, fresh way to introduce some new things to your audience at the beginning of the year. And what a great way to start the year. So Condo was going on, so I do appreciate the irony that like for some of these I'm trying to see their gallery spaces for the first time and their programs, but like they're hosting, say, like, for example, at Mother's Tank Station, they were hosting PPOW, which is an American gallery that I go to all the time, in Tribeca, and they were showing Erin M. Riley, who's an American artist that I see all the time. So that was kind of funny. But for the most part, it was a lot of new artists and galleries that were from, you know, other countries other than the US. But it was still great to be able to see these gallery spaces. It's getting really dark in here. Sorry, it's a bit dreary outside, so I feel like the lighting is changing a little bit. If you're like, what's happening? You're getting darker and darker, but hopefully that helped a little bit. So this particular gallery is an interesting one. They are in East London, and they do share a space with another gallery called Greengrassy Gallery. They are Corvi Mora Gallery, and they represent the very famous artist Lynette Yadam Boyachi, I hope is how you're saying that. That is how you say it according to ChatGPT. But as you all probably know, I am very good at butchering artist names. I try my best, but just can't win them all. So yeah, Corvi Mora has been around for a while. Apparently they opened in 2000, and yeah, they're in South London. There's a ton of great galleries in South London. I could probably do a whole thing just about South London. The issue with South London is that the galleries are more spread out. And so I do try to look for, again, just for practicality reasons, like clusters and galleries that are kind of easy to walk to, where I can just maybe take, like I took an Uber, for example, down there because it was going to take an hour on the train. So I took an Uber, it was about a 35-minute Uber down to South London. Went to that gallery, took another 35-minute Uber over to Bethal Green, and then from Bethal Green I was able to walk around to everything. And so, you do what you can logistically, but they were one of the most important ones that I personally wanted to see in South London, just based on how much time I had. Their space is absolutely gorgeous. It's this beautiful, very wide open kind of warehouse space. You get there and you're a little bit like, where am I? Because it's very subtle. They share the building again with this other gallery. They also share the building with this like organic wine company of some kind. So it's a little bit, you kind of, you know, ring the bell and they open up and you walk in, and then the gallery's kind of in the back. But this space was absolutely stunning, and this show was absolutely stunning. I won't go into too much of it because I will have the dedicated video, of course, that you can watch. My slight rant is that with this gallery and with Green Gassy Gallery, I don't know if this is normal or if they just kind of like forgot to upload the press release, but there was no information about the show on the website. I know that they had information at the gallery sitting on the desk like all galleries do, you know, printed out and whatnot, but I didn't grab it because I thought obviously every gallery puts the information online as well, and I don't want to have like 50 things of paper in my bag at the end of the day, and it's not that environmentally friendly. So I just assumed, silly me, that there would be information online. There was zero information online, and I'm like, what? Like, what's the point of having an exhibit if you're not going to provide any context for said exhibit? I don't care how famous the artist is. Like, that's the whole freaking point of being a gallery, is that you explain to people what this show is about and why I should care. So I was kind of pissed off, as you can see, as I'm going back and editing and doing this video, because her works deserve better. Thank you very much. And I love the portraits, and I especially I would have loved to know more about her explorations into charcoal. I would love to know more about her poetry. Nope, nothing. And then similarly, upstairs, Green Grassy Gallery, which honestly, this is actually worse. So Green Grassy Gallery was hosting two galleries, one from Paris, one from, I can't remember off the top of my head, but they had, I believe, 4 artists between them that they were showing. No information about these artists either. I'm like, what? Also on their websites, they didn't have any information. They had information about the artists, but they didn't have any information about the show, which one of the artists was like a kind of a more conceptual, like uses humor in his works, had a freaking 2 life-size stuffed animal-like works. You can't throw a freaking life-size stuffed animal into the entrance of your show and not give the viewer context as to what the heck is going on. Like, this is why people get annoyed with the art world. Right here. So, I'm annoyed. Take it seriously. Like, don't be a gallery if you're gonna be lazy. That's probably the most tea and anger and aggression you're gonna see on this channel, but it's literally reasons like this that I do what I do, because this kind of stuff just pisses me off. So here we are. So that was there, and then I left Green Grassy, and then I went over to this other grouping of galleries, like I mentioned, in Bethal Green, and I started at Project Native Informant, which, thank you, all of you guys had press releases, and I was able to dive into the show, which, thank God, because actually, at first glance, the show, they were hosting, so Project Native Informant was also doing Condo. They were hosting a gallery from Bangkok, and at first glance, it was I don't want to say conceptual, because once you understand the context, it clicks and you're like, oh, totally understand this. It's actually quite obvious. So I actually would not say that it was conceptual, but it was very important to have the context of what was going on, because if you just walked in and you saw all of these sculptures, you would just be like, what? Like, what is happening here? And that's the case with a lot of art. My God, sorry, it's just getting like darker outside. So yeah, so this was so powerful. This was an artist called Phong Tien Phan, and I loved this exhibit. So she really spoke to, I would say she's quite a feminist artist. She really spoke to this concept of, the title of the exhibit was called Doesn't Work. And that was like a very clear reference to what women can go through, where we do a lot of things called like invisible work, like household labor, things that just like magically happen when you come home to like a clean house, especially women that maybe sometimes have sacrificed having careers for taking care of children. And this is not something that's widely acknowledged by society as real work because it's not a traditional career, etc., etc. And so she's really calling all of this stuff out in multiple ways with her sculptures and calling out the struggle behind it and kind of the BS behind it, which I really love. I love this work in the center of the show. So it is a clear reference to the very classic magic trick, which is like sawing a woman in half. And instead of, you know, a woman in a beautiful leotard in a box, it's got two pieces of, you know, on an ironing board and stuff. And it's calling out basically this like divide where labor is being divided between the sexes, between men and female, and how like labor that is given to men versus labor that's given to women, like the difference between the two. And I just thought this show was fantastic. I thought it was very profound, but also very easy to understand once you read the press release and you understand the context. So I really love this show, even though it was a relatively small space. It's just this little one-room space, but it also shows you that like you don't need to have that much space as a gallery to have a really powerful show and a powerful exhibit. And I really enjoyed this exhibit. So it was awesome to go to Project Native Informant for the first time. And then the nice thing is right next to it is another gallery called Mother's Tank Station. And this is another gallery that I have seen at fairs. I think they have a great program there. I didn't know they're actually originally were an Irish gallery, and then they opened their second location in London, and this is their second location. They opened it in 2017, so like it's on the newer side, and again, small, intimate, kind of one-room space, still does the job. And they show the works by the American gallery, New York-based gallery PPOW, with the American artist Aaron M. Riley, which I won't go into too much detail about, but I do just want to call out because I love the juxtaposition that Erin M. Riley always has in her works between her technique as well as the style of her works. She is known for these textile works, and she creates them in a very traditional way. So on a loom, she also hand dyes all of her yarns. So her whole process is very traditional. But then what she's depicting in her works is very non-traditional. So she tackles a lot of themes around feminism and internet culture and just things that you would never expect to see on a tapestry in a traditional sense. So I always really enjoy her works for that reason. So that show was nice. And then right down the street from that is another exhibition space called Marine Pally, I believe is how you say it. And that was fun as well. They had a British artist called Liam Gillick, and what was kind of cool is, again, a small space, but they did a really great job of it. They have like a small space on the left side and then one on the other side. And I like how they showed kind of different, this was a much more conceptual show, and they showed different sculptures of his from various years. And yeah, it was a nice show. I'll let you watch the video to kind of get into that more. And then I want to call out the approach because I really love the approach. It sounds gimmicky, but I love it. It's so British. Like, it's such a great... So first of all, it's still in Bethal Green. You're walking like 10 minutes up the road to get there. And you start walking, and then it's like you're on like approach road and like approach corner and like like the whole neighborhood, and then it's like approach housing. Like everything is called the approach, which I've never actually noticed before. I think it's hilarious. So then you get to this pub called the Approach Pub or something, and you're like, okay. And then thankfully I've been there quite a few times, well, like 2 or 3 times now. And so I knew exactly where it was, but if you didn't, it's kind of like a gallery speakeasy. Like you walk into the pub and then there's a little door to the left of the bar. Otherwise, it's a completely normal pub. Like people were hanging out, they were like rehashing their days there, they were with their families. Like it's like the quintessential British pub, which love it. Wish I had more time. Would have enjoyed a little beer now that dry January is over, but I didn't have time. So then you go up the stairs, and then it's got this really nice, large, very light gallery space. I think there's actually 2 spaces. One of them might be like more of a viewing room that wasn't open, I don't think. And then there's like the office, and then there's the actual larger gallery space. And they were also doing Condo. I really, really loved they brought in a gallery from Zurich that I had never heard of. It was Philip Zollinger. And they brought in two artists from that gallery who one of them is American, one of them is Swiss, I guess. They both live in Basel, where the gallery is based in Zurich, but they both live in Basel in Switzerland. But one of them is an American, Cassidy Toner. I really loved the artist Renee Levy's works. I love artists that can show restraint. I've talked about this before, and leave some space on the canvas. I think it's much harder to do than you'd think it would be. And I just love that. So I was very into her large scale works, and she's been practicing for 30 years. So I really love to see and discover those works. And then I went over to Soft Opening, which was another like 10-minute walk down the street. And I'm not gonna lie, that was a little bit of a disappointment. This was a super conceptual show. And I think that's why it was a bit of a disappointment, because it's so different from what I would have expected. Like Soft Opening, you can see, again, they always participate in a lot of the NADA fairs and stuff, and they always have amazing paintings and sculpture, and there's color, and they have a program, I would say, that's more synonymous with like Nino Mir or someone, where it's approachable but also very easy to enjoy art, I think, for lack of a better term. Not conceptual art. I never in a million years would have thought I'd be walking into this like super conceptual exhibit, but I did. And so I was happy to see the space and happy to finally, you know, put a name to a face, but it was a little bit of a bummer that this was the show. No offense to that artist whatsoever. I think that she did a great job with what she was going for. Again, it's just way more conceptual of a show than I tend to like, but that's just my personal preference. So that was Soft Opening. And yeah, so I'm really happy I ventured out. I know that there's so many more London galleries. In fact, let me know in the comments below your favorite more like emerging London galleries, and I will try to do this again and have more time to, you know, venture out and about to get to each of them, because it is a priority for me to kind of see more spaces as much as I can. But I'm just happy I got to see this grouping. So then comes Saturday. Saturday was fun. I had a little bit of personal time in the morning. I went to the White City Soho House gym, which I love. You guys have the nicest freaking gym. Not that Nick Jones is really doing much anymore, but hey man, if you're listening to this, give us a gym. Give us a gym in New York, please. I do not understand why the Soho Houses can't have a freaking gym in New York. I'm just gonna leave that there. But anyway, it's fine. I love the gym in White City. It is so nice. So had an amazing gym session, had breakfast, not that you all care, but had a leisurely morning is what I'm trying to say. Really enjoyed myself, was enjoying my time. Went to gallery shows in Mayfair later in the day, and started with Thaddeus Ropack for the Joan Snyder show, which was so good. It was almost like a mini retrospective. They highlighted her most famous series. So if you're not familiar with Joan Snyder's work, she's really having a moment, but she's been around. Like, she was famous in the 70s for her stroke paintings. And so it's not like she's just like came from nowhere. She's been around, but I love that she's really getting the moment that she deserves right now. And she's very inspired by, especially her newer paintings now. If you've seen her paintings in the last like 10 years, very inspired by music, which I love. And you can see that like rawness, that emotion. I love her incorporation of all different types of materials now into her works. Like, they're very, almost kind of Judith Bernstein-esque, where it's like intense and messy, but it was really fun to see, especially an artist that I'm appreciated and loving now, and I've seen the works that she creates now in her 80s, like getting to go through that journey of looking at her works from the early to late 60s all the way to the present, which is what Thaddeus Ropack did. So when you're walking through the hallway, you know, you see some of her early stroke paintings. And then you go in to the first gallery space on the ground floor and you see more stroke paintings, as well as you kind of start to see like how the stroke paintings are evolving. And then you randomly see these like landscape inspired paintings from when she moved to upstate New York, which, to be perfectly honest, they were super dark. Part of me wonders if that move was like not the best for her mentally, because they were totally different to what she does now. So very curious if that was kind of a tough time for her in life, the mid 80s. And then upstairs, you start to see more of the kind of orchestra inspired paintings and more of what she does now. But I just love when, yeah, you can kind of get a whole little mini picture of an artist's career in an exhibit and learn about them. And I cannot wait for that catalog. I've pre-ordered it. It is coming to the US February 25th. So I will be waiting patiently for that to arrive at my house, because I really, really love Joan Snyder. Very happy to get to see that show. And then right down the street from Gallery Thaddeus Ropac was Gallery Max Hetzler, who had a very great group show. Group shows are always a little bit of a hit or miss, but this one was nice, very easy to consume. It was all works on paper and all artists that the gallery either represents or works with on a regular basis. So tons of my favorites. I loved the little 16-part series of the little mini Günter Forg works that were just so, because you always see his like giant paintings. So to see these really small works on paper, I really loved from like such a major artist like that. Loved the Eddie Martinez works on paper. Those were also fantastic. I mean, the Cara Appel works were amazing. I was super surprised, which I mentioned in my dedicated video, the works by Grace Weaver that were a departure from her capturing figures, which she normally does, into capturing flowers, so more like landscape-esque. I'm very interested to see kind of where she goes with that and how her work evolves. So that was fun. Obviously, you're going to have some Andre Butzers. Love that. So it was a cool show. It was a great show. Again, very collector friendly. If you're looking to kind of dip your toe, there were people there that were like, you know, talking about purchasing the works and stuff. Works on paper in that smaller size. It's just such a great way to be able to acquire something from an artist that you may not, totally what I've done in the past as well. Like I have a work on paper by Grace Weaver that, yeah, I'll share at some point when I start sharing bits of my collection, but it's a great way to kind of dip your toe into the pond and just to feel more comfortable with collecting in general, because it can be a very scary and intimidating process. But I really want to call out the Jana Schroeder show. Talk about collecting. I'm very fortunate to have a work of Jana Schroeder's in my home. I love Jana Schroeder's works so much. And so to see any one of her shows, I absolutely adore. I love that she's working with Skarstedt now, and I love that he's having so many shows of hers. I just think she's really getting the love that she deserves, because of course Nino Mir showed her works in the US as well over time. But I just think that, you know, for the most part, her shows were more and more in Germany, where she's based. I believe she's in Dusseldorf. And so yeah, I just love when I can see her works in the US and areas like that. So I love that Skarstedt's been doing shows of hers in Paris and London, and hopefully he'll have one in New York eventually as well. But I would love to meet her as well. I've never met her. She seems so cool and so funny, and yeah, very, very spitfire personality. And yeah, I loved the show. I love her like nerdy science angle of it all. I love any show. It kind of reminded me, not aesthetically, but theme-wise, it reminds me a lot of the Adrian Guinea show at Pace Gallery, which was all about the same kind of topic, roughly speaking, which is like how we as humans are processing so much information now, and like how does that impact how we're evolving as a society, and what does it mean to be like in person versus, you know, digitally present. And I just love that they're attacking this stuff because it's so top of mind, and it's such a huge thing that's not going away, and it's such a, yeah, weird, interesting concept. And so I love that they tackle that in their works, but I also love that it's not like so obvious. Guinea, of course, more so, because he truly had like figures holding devices and stuff with their like brains being sucked out. So that was like pretty direct, but I love that Jana's attacking this with more of an abstract approach, literally with her abstract works, but I love her abstract works. I love everything she does. So head over heels with the show. My personal favorites were the black and white works. I love when she does a more monochrome personally, just because like she's got so much texture and pattern and everything, but I also love her colored works too. I own a colored work, so yeah. But I'm not gonna lie, if she ever wanted to go back to her old color palette of the whole, yeah, black and white and blue and heaven. I love. And she also had smaller works too, which I really appreciate that she's doing some smaller works for the poor people like me that can that's what we need to be able to purchase. And then yeah, I'll end it at the well, I won't end it because it keeps going. So we also went to White Cube. I don't really have much to say about that show. It was interesting. Very bizarre to me that the sculptures were sourced apparently in the basement gallery. They came from the sugar factory's sign. So the whole time I was just like, how the hell did you get that? Which of course they didn't explain. So unanswered question. Let me know if you know, because I mean, that's a cool story, but like, how did you come through this? Did you like buy it at auction? Were you like friends with Kara Walker when she had the final exhibit there and she like finagled it for you? Like, I want to know the story. You can't just like say that this came from the signage of the sugar factory and then give like no other context around it. So that was interesting. But yeah, let's get into the other exhibits because Pilar Carayas really crushed it with the shows. And I don't want to rush through this, but I also know this video might get a little long because I did see a lot of stuff in my short but sweet trip to London. So Pilar Carayas, as I mentioned, has multiple spaces within London. So her smaller space in Savile Row, which is really, really beautiful. I love the checkered floor. I love the vibes of this space. In fact, Sophie von Hellermann actually painted the ceiling of the office in that space. So if you ever like kind of peek in, like you can see some of her works there too. This was a show by the Canadian artist. I actually didn't know she was Canadian. And I am so bad about saying her name. It's something in my, I don't know, but Sojourner Truth Parsons. I don't know why it's so hard for me to say, but like Sojourner Truth Parsons. It's something in my throat. I don't know, but so I'm so sorry. I'm butchering your name. Loved her work for years. I loved seeing her shows. She used to have shows with Foxy Production, rest in peace, which was a gallery in Chinatown in New York that closed, I think a year or two ago now at this point. And yeah, she used to show with them a fair amount, and that's how I was introduced to her works. And I love her works, and I love these works as well. I love, as I mentioned in the dedicated video, how these are like a departure from her traditional figurative works. And those works in the past used to comment more, they were figures because she was really like, I don't want to say wrestling with her identity, but like it was a lot about like her identity, especially her identity as like a biracial individual, being like half black. And that's why there's a lot of black in her works. But this is just another beautiful evolution of her works where they're more abstract. She's using these beautiful layered shapes, still a lot of black, which I love because it's quite unique. And then using this like analogy of the garden for kind of like change and renewal and growth, I just think is so fascinating. So I really, really enjoyed that show. I thought that was a very strong grouping of paintings from Parsons, and I love that Pilar Carayas is working with her now because yeah, she's such a talented artist. She really deserves a great gallery like them that can kind of foster her career and stuff. And then the Ruby Neri show at Massimo De Carlo. I mean, any show at that space. When they moved from their original space, which was like a 10-minute kind of walk over to the west, I was originally like, oh, because it was such a beautiful space. But this is actually, I think, even though it's a little smaller, it's even more beautiful. The traditional kind of paneling and the mirrors. It's very French, to be honest, kind of the decor of it all with the chandeliers and stuff. But I just love this space. And I loved how different this show was as well for Neri. This was her first show in the UK, her first show with Massimo De Carlo. Oh my God. I mean, I feel so bad for her. She was one of the artists that lost her homes in the LA fires. So I'm happy that she had this exhibit, you know, to celebrate. But God, what a disaster and tragedy for her. So that was tough. But Really enjoyed the show. I loved, again, that it was like her smaller, kind of smaller versions of her sculptures, but it's still a very powerful message, which is like the many different, how we as women have like so many different facets to us. And that's kind of what these complex, but figurative sculptures are trying to communicate, which I always think is such an interesting and personal and very powerful message. So I enjoyed that show. I loved her works on paper to complement it. And I had never seen works on paper from her before. So that was kind of like a fun departure and a fun evolution of her practice. And then we get to Sophie von Hellermann's. I have to hurry because I feel like the sun is gonna set before I finish talking about this. Oh my God. Okay, I can't make it any brighter. It's as bright as it's gonna go, so we're just gonna have to go with it. So this was a fantastic exhibit by Sophie. I love that she is incorporating more and more sculptures into her work through these sort of home objects. I love the layout of the exhibit. I think this is a really hard room potentially to curate for, because when you walk into the gallery space, there's quite a few windows, to be honest. Like, it's like a huge room, and there is one, you know, two large walls, but then it's like window, door, window, window, if that makes any sense. So they did have to cover some windows. They kind of did like a wall in front of, or did a hang in front of one window, so that it's flexible. They can deal with that. But I do think it's a challenging. And Hauser is the same way. It's really interesting because they're right next door. They also kind of have an interesting space to work with, but they make the best of it. And I think they really made the best of it with this show, in the sense of like either just covering a window or like taking advantage of that large expansive wall by having this huge like gallery wall of works, but then having the room separators. It was such a genius placement of room separators, which apparently she started doing she had an exhibit in the Hamptons over the summer. That was kind of the first time she was experimenting with that. And I mentioned this in my dedicated video, but I love that artists are working more with room separators, because I think it's just such a fun, very traditional method of the past, but it's by applying these like more contemporary artworks to it. I just think it's a really fun contrast. And it's also, again, very collector friendly, because if you don't have the wall space, this could be a really beautiful way to incorporate art into your space. Yeah, if you don't have just a white wall to hang something on. And I love that it really like guided the viewer through the show, because it was truly set up in this way that was like almost like holding your hand, telling you like, okay, and then here we are here, and here we are here. And just not to skip ahead, but my takeaway and the whole premise of the show, which I think is such a beautiful, I talked a little bit about it in the dedicated video, but there's a lot of nods to, I mean, the whole show really is a big nod to David Bowie and to Ziggy Stardust specifically. And Ziggy Stardust was this creative alter ego for Bowie that was really meant to represent this rebellious, like, it's okay to be you, and it's okay to be, you know, different and uncategorizable and feminine, especially. You know, this was such a big theme, and I think that's such a perfect reflection of von Hellermann's work as well, because I feel like sometimes artists think they need to, or women, or in general, it's not even just artists. Like, I feel like as women, sometimes we feel like to be taken seriously, we have to be like a man and be harsh and be whatever. And like, I actually think von Hellermann's work is very rebellious because it does the exact opposite. She's leaning into that hyper feminine, that dreamscape, all of these things that sometimes in art can be not taken as seriously, you know, if because they are more feminine, and that makes it tainted in some way or something. So I think in the same way that Bowie, you know, through Ziggy Stardust was really rebelling with that feminine energy and the ability to just dream and be like, I don't care, I'm going to do something different. Sophie totally did that with her show. And for me, that really struck a chord. I'm going to get like emotional talking about it. Because I think the most important thing to let people do is to dream. And I think depending on how you were raised, or like your childhood, or just whatever sometimes that's really hard for people, and that's really hard for me a lot, to let myself just dream and to just go there. So that is like a super powerful message, and that was kind of the whole message of the show. And so even in the way that it was organized, like walking through the room separators, and then you have these chairs that are in this, you know, surrounding the column, and you could sit in the chairs to then look upon the works. And then there were these large oversized curtains. Oh my god. I'm fine. No, I mean, you can see why I love her work though. So there were these large oversized curtains, and then there's like a little chair, and then there's the lamp, and it's like the moon and the chair, and you like, it's like, sit here, think, have a moment, explore in your mind. Like every single corner of the show was really facilitating just like taking a moment to dream and to really like lean into that part of your mind, which I think is super powerful. So obviously I was very moved by the show, and I really love the show. So yeah, I hope you guys all really loved it too. But that was the Sophie von Hellermann show. And then downstairs was the George Wilson show, which again, she's a British artist. She's not represented by the gallery, but she does a really great Pilar Kreis works with various artists, and this was a cool show. I loved the art history references. Like right when you go downstairs, there's like a small work that is 100% referring, I mean, it didn't say that, but I'm pretty sure it is, referring to Fragonard's, like the swing. It's kind of a beautiful recreation of that, and her references to just romanticism in general by her kind of, it's not so on the nose. Like she's really inspired by English folklore and stuff, which you can see in how she's depicting the foliage and stuff of all the leaves and the trees and the landscapes. But the way she's just like inserting this little character into all of her works in this really just kind of like to the side way, I think is her way of her version of romanticism, which I really enjoyed. And then also her little take on the famous work Ophelia with the woman in the river, and then you have this like creature instead that's like very confident and kind of looking at you like, what are you doing here? Like I thought that was a really fun take and reference of that classic piece within art history. So I really enjoyed George Wilson's show as well. But I think that's a good place to leave it. Sunday, I just flew back to the US, and yeah, so my trip was quite short, but I had really incredible experiences, and I got to meet some really amazing people. So again, hello to everyone that I met. I had such a good time, and I've got to go back. I've got to go. Well, I'm obviously going back to England, but there's other parts of outside of London that I also really want to go to as well, that I'm hoping to in the future. So yeah, loved recapping this with you all, and I hope you enjoyed this, and I will see you all in my next video.